Minister update us on what's being done to help more of these recovery centres get going?
First of all, let me say and pay tribute to the medical facilities that are available both at Camp Bastion and in Britain. I have visited them myself, as I know other members of this House has. These are the most advanced medical facilities that are available to our troops, and it is right that they be the best in the world. At Selly Oak, which I've also visited recently, I know that the care goes into helping those people who are injured, many people with very, very severe injuries indeed. And I saw myself when I had visited Afghanistan a few weeks ago and then went to Selly Oak only a day or two afterwards, how quick the treatment that was given as people had been moved with speed from Afghanistan back to Birmingham. I agree with him about the work at Headley Court, and we are anxious to continue to support that and are investing more in that. As far as members of the forces who retire or who are not able to serve longer in the armed forces, I am concerned that compensation arrangements are satisfactory, and that is why, after the recent court cases, the Secretary of State for Defence has set up a review headed by a former Chief of the Defence Staff to look at those issues of compensation. As far as future employment and some of the projects that have come forward to help armed forces, men and women who are looking for alternative opportunities after they recover from their injuries, we are determined to do everything we can in this respect as well. And again, I believe, and it's right to say, there is all-party support for this extra work.
Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As well as the physical injuries, there are, of course, the mental scars. It's estimated that after the Falklands War, more service personnel actually committed suicide than died in that conflict. We mustn't make the mistake that's been made in the past of brushing this under the carpet. In the United States, veterans are contacted regularly, even decades after they've served. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that that should happen here as well?
As you know, Mr. Speaker, we have a minister that is nominated as the Veterans Minister. We tried to keep in touch with all the veterans organisations. I myself met the Royal British Legion recently. At the same time, in the White Paper, in which we itemised the services available to soldiers, armed force members and former armed force members, we also talked about the mental health services that are available for the future. We wanted to ensure that those people who are members of the armed forces and former members of the armed forces had priority in health service treatment, and that was the purpose of the White Paper and the recommendations in it. And again, I believe there's all-party support for that.
David Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope the Prime Minister will look at that specific proposal as well. Now, we are going to discuss Afghanistan in a moment, but I want to ask the Prime Minister a specific question about the Territorial Army, an organisation that plays a vital role in our armed forces and has indeed lost many people in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've had a specific case of a serving officer who's due to go to Afghanistan in October 2010. He's been told that of the training days he should have between now and then, he will only be paid for half of them. And let us be clear about what is happening here. Volunteers, and they are volunteers, being asked possibly to lay down their life in the service of their country, are not getting the basic training they need. Does the Prime Minister agree with me? This is totally unacceptable.
Well, I shall look at everything he says on this, and I will write to him about the individual case that he's raised. But I can tell him also that what we have done in the Territorial Army, which has been celebrating its 100th anniversary, what we have tried to make sure is that the effort of the Territorial Army can also be linked to the work that we're doing in Afghanistan. And so we have given priority in the work of the Territorial Army to what it can do to help the effort in Afghanistan. And I will write to him with the details of what we are doing in that respect.
Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister told us in an answer he gave at the beginning of Prime Minister's questions that in his statement he's going to say that we must not send armed forces personnel into battle without the proper training. Now, two things appear to be happening here. One is that basic training for all TA members is being cut, but also I have this specific case of someone who knows he's going to Afghanistan in October 2010, having his training cut. I understand those that we've got a conversation between the Ministry of Defence and the Prime Minister. I think they need to have a conversation after Prime Minister's questions where he says this is unacceptable and it's got to stop.
Mr. Speaker, the reason the Defence Secretary was talking to me was he was assuring me that the work of the Territorial Army that is directed towards Afghanistan is properly resourced and will continue to be properly resourced. If he has an individual case that he wishes to raise with me, or any member has, I shall look at it in detail. But our determination is that every member of our armed forces who is in Afghanistan or going to Afghanistan is both trained and equipped for the work that they undertake. And he will see from the statement I make this afternoon, later this afternoon, that we are doing everything in our power to make this happen. And I hope that he will then look at the statements that are made by the Chief of the General Staff and the Chief of the Defence Staff, which will support exactly what I am saying.
Madeleine Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Saturday, I was joined by the Porthcawl Guides to celebrate 100 years of guiding. A year's celebration across the world is taking place to celebrate this wonderful movement. Will the Prime Minister join me in sending congratulations to the Porthcawl Guides and to all guides who have taken part in this movement over the last 100 years, and to those men and women who supported guiding throughout that period?
Well, you know, I think all sides of the House will want to congratulate the guides and congratulate them on 100 years of service to our country, and congratulate those officers of the guides and those leaders of the guides who have done so much to encourage young people, and young women in particular, to make sure that they can make a very big contribution to the community. So our best wishes go to the guides on their 100th anniversary.
Nick Clegg.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to add my own expressions of sympathy and condolence. I'd like to add my own expressions of sympathy and condolence to the families and friends of the 37 British servicemen who tragically lost their lives serving in Afghanistan over the last 3 months. We all owe them an immeasurable debt of gratitude for their bravery, their professionalism and their sacrifice. Mr. Speaker, we also owe it to every single one of them to ask the difficult questions about what we're doing in Afghanistan. Are we doing the right things to succeed, as I strongly believe we must? There'll be many people in the country today simply asking themselves why British soldiers are fighting and dying for a government in Kabul that is deeply corrupt and has presided over widespread electoral fraud. Now, I know he's giving a statement later about troop numbers, but does he not owe it to those troops to say clearly where he stands on an Afghan government he's asking them to defend?
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful, first of all, for him supporting the message of condolence and sympathy that we're sending to all the families of those who have been bereaved as a result of what has happened this summer. And I appreciate his direct comments on that. As far as our presence in Afghanistan is concerned, let me say first of all, and I'll talk about this in more detail later, let me say first of all that no one can be satisfied with what happened during the elections in Afghanistan. Every one of us has questions that has got to be answered, not so much about the security attached to the election, because a huge amount of work went in by our troops and our forces into the security accompanying the election, but the amount of ballot rigging that appears to have taken place. And everybody, I think, knows that 1 million votes are being examined out of the 6 or 7 million votes that happen, and these are the subject of the International Commission examining these issues. So I hope that he will wait until we have the final conclusion from the Electoral Commission. I hope he will then accept that their verdict is one that we will have to follow. I believe that this commission, that is half Afghan, half international, is looked at these issues in a great deal of detail, and I believe that they're going to report very soon.